If you find this healing sleep meditation sleep story helpful or interesting, feel free to give it a thumbs up, share with someone who may find it useful, and leave any comments below. If you don't want to miss any future sleep stories, you can subscribe and click the bell notification icon. My sleep stories are made with you, for you, and posted weekly here on YouTube. You can access all my sleep stories, add an introduction free on my Sleep Stories podcast, my alternative to Patreon, where you can also download the stories for offline listening. They are also available without this YouTube introduction on most streaming and downloads services like Apple Music, Amazon Music and Spotify. If you're interested in what else I offer, you can find details of all this and of my hypnotherapy and autism e-courses, books and merch in the description and on my website danjoneshypnosis.com. So I hope you enjoy this story. So, just take a moment to allow your eyes to close and allow yourself to begin to relax. And as you begin to relax, I'm just going to tell this sleep meditation in the background. And while I tell this sleep meditation, I don't know whether you'll drift asleep faster to the sound of my voice or to the spaces between my words. And as you begin to drift asleep, I'm just going to tell a story about you finding yourself out sailing on the ocean. And you're on a sailboat, and it's at night time, and the water's calm, just gently bobbing up and down. And there's a warm breeze. And you've got the sail unfurled. And in that warm, calm breeze, it's just gently moving your sailboat through the water. You can feel the bobbing of the boat on the water. You can hear the slight sploshing as the boat passes through those gentle waves, and the slight sway of the boat, and the occasional flapping sound of the sail. In moments when the wind calms down and then starts up again gently. And as you sail along, so you can notice the moon in the sky and the way that moon creates dancing silver speckles of light across the ocean. You can notice the shades of blue and the dark, almost grey-black clouds passing in front of the stars and occasionally in front of the moon. And yet the moon's brightness manages to shine through much of the cloud, just adding a slight wispiness across the moon while the cloud passes by. And you can relax back on the boat, gazing up at the sky, recognizing certain constellations, and watching as they disappear from view and reappear as clouds pass. And the only light out here is the light of the moon and stars. You have all lights on the boat turned off. And just having the sail up makes the boat quiet as it passes through the water. You hear the occasional distant splash of whales rising up to the surface and lowering down again, and the occasional sound of whales taking a breath before they dive again. And you can enjoy a sense of deep relaxation, being out here, a long way from land. And as you gaze up at the sky, so you occasionally notice dots floating by, almost having a sense like they make a sound, but knowing that you can't hear anything from them. But you can become so absorbed in watching and following dots passing across the sky that you almost have that feeling of hearing something. You can notice the occasional shooting star, and again have that feeling of almost hearing a fizzing sound, and almost having that sense of smelling a slight ozony smell, but knowing that it's probably just your senses telling you that that's what you should experience. And you can find yourself occasionally closing your eyes and just listening to the sounds around you, the sounds of the water, the sounds of the boat, the sounds of silence. Almost like there's a softness massaging your hearing, and almost noticing your breathing falling into sync with the movement of the boat on the waves, almost hypnotically lulling you to sleep. And as you begin to get a feeling of wanting to fall asleep, so you take down the sail, you lower an anchor. You know that the weather's expected to remain calm and peaceful through the night. And you head into the boat, and you've got the most comfortable breeze blowing in through a window into the boat. And as you relax on the softest bed, wrapped in the fluffiest blanket, you can notice the feeling of breathing in the fresh sea air, almost like that flows into you, passing through your body, almost like it's healing through you and relaxing you deeper and deeper. Then each out-breath is almost like breathing out a little stress and tension, making more room for deeper relaxation. And as you fall into an automatic pattern of breathing in that deeply relaxing way, so you begin to drift deeper and more relaxed asleep. And as you drift deeper and more relaxed asleep, you start to have a sense of colours in your mind's eye. Just a glimmer of the colours, the occasional pulsing of light and colour, different shades. And then gradually, out of those vague impressions of colour and light, you begin to just notice patterns and shapes. And with it, you begin to hear sounds in your mind's eye. And you begin to lose awareness of being on that boat while you drift into an awareness of a dream. And you find yourself almost floating through a pitch black room. Your mind, as you pass through this pitch black room, is telling you that you're walking. And yet you just have more of a feeling like you're gliding, like your legs aren't actually moving. You're upright, but you just seem to be gliding forward through this room. And occasionally there'll be a flash of light, and you'll notice beams of light. And you realise that there's a little bit of light getting into this room. And in this room, in the darkness, there seem to be some mirrors on the walls. And as you glide past the mirrors, so the little light that gets into this room bounces and reflects, and you get different viewpoints of that light as you pass by different mirrors. And then you recognize that in front of you is yourself, getting closer and closer. And as you get closer and closer, so you begin to notice an ornate wooden border to that mirror in front of you. You notice the way that mirror is curved, almost like the shape of an egg. And you can see from your waist up in that mirror. And as you reach out towards that mirror with your hand, so the room illuminates slightly, as if slightly more light is shining in from somewhere. And you notice behind you in the mirror your reflection from different angles in some of the other mirrors around the room. And as your hand gently touches the mirror, it notices that coolness of the glass, the smoothness of that glass. And your hand can gently slide those fingertips down that glass. And then you place the palm of your hand against the palm of your hand in the mirror. And then you notice that your hand begins to pass through the mirror, almost like the mirror has turned to water. And there's a comfortable warmth as that hand passes through the mirror. And you float yourself forward towards the mirror. And you float into the mirror. And as you fully pass through that mirror. You find yourself in the past. You can suddenly hear sounds of birds. Notice yourself surrounded by woodland. And with your hands still stretched out, you can see how much younger that hand looks. And then over your shoulder, you hear a friend laughing and running and calling your name and talking with you. And you realise it's a good friend from when you were much younger, back from your school days. And you're out here exploring the woods, hearing the rustling leaves as the wind blows a breeze, smelling that fresh woodland air. And the friend is saying, come on, come on. And they're encouraging you along. And you instinctively follow. And you disappear off into the woods, following them through the trees. And as you weave around those trees, so you touch the bark of those trees. You notice some falling leaves occasionally as the wind continues to blow a breeze. And you find yourself at the foot of a tree with some rope hanging down from that tree and some blocks of wood attached to the trunk. And your friend has already climbed, holding the rope, walking up those blocks of wood, up to the treehouse, and they're calling down to you, come on, come on. And you instinctively just engage with this. And you grab that rope and you can feel the rope in your hands, the coarseness of that rope. As you get your foot up onto the first wooden block, and you pull yourself up and push yourself up and ascend that tree and enter the treehouse. And the two of you sit in that treehouse. You can feel a slight breeze blowing into the house. And they pour you both a drink from a flask. And they talk about this being your space, just the two of you, and how they don't want this moment to end. They wish it was possible to stay young forever, to be able to just remain in this moment. And a part of you knows that this is just a dream, it's just a memory, and yet it feels so real. You know that you can touch the walls of this treehouse. You can smell the wood the treehouse is built with. You can hear the slight creaking of the tree as it gently sways, almost imperceptibly. And it all feels so real and engaging. Like you've learned how to hang on to these moments of pleasure from life. And being able to re-access them. And you hold that drink in two hands. Put it up to your mouth and have some of that drink. And rest it back down in your lap. As you go quiet for a moment, just enjoying the moment. Almost hearing the peace and silence of the woodland, the sounds of birds. And sitting back against the wall of the treehouse. Finding yourself wanting to capture this moment as the friend had described. And while up in the treehouse, trying to make time stand still. You notice how the sun is beginning to set, and the air is quickly developing a coolness to the breeze. And you know that autumn must be approaching, because it can be warm through the day. And yet now it cools down quickly into the evening. And you both agree it's time to go. And you leave that treehouse. And they say it's time to head home. And you head back the way you came. Only as you near that mirror, they stop. They say goodbye. They say that they're always in your mind. You can always come here. You can see them. Because they're always with you. And you look back at them. And you smile. And then you put your hand out, touch that mirror. Noticing your hand going through the mirror. You pass through that mirror, finding yourself back in that dark room. And for a while you just stand there, thinking about the experience. Curious about your learning, curious about the growth and curiosity, the discoveries you're making within your mind. And then you walk over to one of the other mirrors. And again you can see yourself in that mirror. And you reach out and touch the mirror. And like before, your hand goes through the mirror. And you follow behind it. And this time you find yourself sitting at home, and you're in a conservatory. And you're reading a book. You're drinking a drink. You're taking time to relax, time out from your day. And then someone walks through to the conservatory and they see you sat there reading. And they say they thought that you went out on your boat, and that that's where you'd be now. And you notice that they're dressed for bed, and they've got a hot chocolate in their hands, and they're wearing the most comfortable dressing gown. And as you gaze up from the book and notice that, and then look around, you realise outside the conservatory it's night time. And you look over at a clock, and you can see near the clock there's a calendar, and you realise on the calendar, and by the time on the clock, that what you're looking at and experiencing is now, and that right now you are asleep on that boat, and yet right now here you are. And you stand up slowly, placing that book down, looking around you. You see that mirror on the wall at the back of the conservatory. You open the doors of the conservatory and walk outside. You can feel the air as you breathe in and out. And you realise that this mirror seems to have transported you to a location in the here and now. And you begin to wonder whether it's almost like you've somehow teleported. You start to think to yourself how you've heard stories about people astral travelling. You wonder if this is a bit like astral travelling, that you found yourself in another location in the current time, while your body is actually on that boat. And you walk back indoors, and you go in to the living room. You sit down on a comfortable chair. And the person here sits with you. And the two of you just talk and talk. And you find yourselves having conversations you don't normally make time for, asking how each other are, listening, being present. And you feel that there's something almost on the tip of your tongue that you're learning. And you're curious what that is. And then after a while, they say that they're heading to bed. And they stand up, say good night. And they head off to bed. You say you'll head to bed shortly. You just want to finish reading what you were reading first. You go back to the conservatory. You find that book. You find the page you're on, and you continue reading. And when you reach the end of a chapter, you put the bookmark into the book. You put that book down. You walk over to the mirror. And as you reach out to the mirror, so you float through that mirror, finding yourself back in that room. And you can see that opposite that mirror is another mirror on the other wall. And you walk to that other mirror. You take a few deep, comfortable breaths, curious what your experience will be through this mirror. You close your eyes for just a moment. And then you open your eyes and put your hand out. You pass through the mirror. And you find yourself surrounded by the scents of the most beautiful meadow. And it's night time here in this meadow. The meadow is just illuminated by moonlight. And you're in this meadow, up on a hillside, noticing woodland behind you, seeing glistening light on a river that seems to be weaving around below you. You can notice the way that the grass moves and sways, sparkling in that moonlight as the wind blows a breeze gently across that grass, and the different scents of the wildflowers. And you're curious about where here is. Because this seems like a very ordinary place. You're aware of the experiences you've had and are curious about the one that you're having. And you relax back on that meadow, lying down, gazing up at the stars and the moon. And you try to work out the different constellations. But while you're trying to work that out, you find that you can't seem to recognize any. And as someone who's used to sailing, you're very used to looking up at the stars and quickly recognizing the night sky and knowing where you are in relation to that sky. And yet you don't seem to recognize any constellations here. And as you gaze up at the sky, it's just a little curiosity. It doesn't really register the significance of that observation. And you continue to be watching the sky, watching that moon pass across the sky. When suddenly you have this sense that something's rising in the east. And it's got a slight orangey glow. But it doesn't feel like the sun. And it isn't as bright as the sun. And while you gaze over to the east, you start to notice something tangible, something solid appearing in the sky. And it's moving very slowly into view. And you realize that as it rises in the sky. It seems to be a planet with rings, and you notice how much like Saturn it looks. And as the night continues on, that rises higher and higher in the sky. But as more and more of it appears in the sky, there's still even more that hasn't appeared. Until half the night sky is taken up by that planet. And the moon that was heading over to the west is now out of view. And you realize that you're nowhere near sunrise, and that you seem to be on some kind of terraformed moon around a planet. And so you stand up as there's a bit more light now, with the light reflecting off of that planet and onto this moon. And you walk around and begin to explore. And you see, down by the water, what looks almost like camper vans. And so you head down towards those camper vans. And as you get near, you walk around quietly. And it looks like people are probably in them, and perhaps asleep. And so you explore around them. And while you walk around near those camper vans, getting nearer to the water's edge, you can hear that trickling, flowing water, and you notice that some of the plants here that you walk through and brush your legs past seem to let up almost like sparkling purple pollen that floats away from those plants, catches in the breeze, and begins to spread out and rise up into the air, like purple glitter sparkling in the air. And you walk along a little further, following the water, and you find a rock to sit on. You sit on that rock and rest your feet gently into the water, feeling that cool water tickling past your feet. And you wait for the people in those camper vans to wake up. You decide you don't want to disturb them, and while you wait, you end up feeling sleepier and sleepier. And so you relax back on the shore, lying down on the grass, and you just decide to let your eyes close for a moment. And with your eyes closed, you drift so peacefully, so comfortably asleep. And then, after a while of being asleep, you begin to feel the faintest warmth on your face. and a slight light on your face, and you realise that it must be daytime. And as you open your eyes and look around, you see butterflies flying among the plants in the meadow. Unusual butterflies you've never seen before. Butterflies of electric blue that seem to almost sparkle and twinkle while they fly from plant to plant. Purple butterflies and green butterflies, all flying in and out of the unusual flowers here in this meadow. And you watch those butterflies for a while, distracted by the butterflies, before turning your attention to the day. You see the way that river is flowing, the slight mist hovering just ever so slightly above the water. And you notice that the sun in the sky seems much dimmer than you'd expect, and that planet is still visible in the sky, slowly setting down the west. And you have this sense from where the sun is in the sky that this isn't just the first light of morning, that you've probably slept for a while. And then you hear someone acknowledging you. And acknowledging that you're awake. And they ask if you'd like something to eat. And you look over towards those cabins or towards those little homes by the water. And you realise that that's what they seem to be, almost like little research centres. The sort of thing you recall seeing on programmes about Antarctica. And you stand up and you head over, and the friendly person smiling at you, greeting you, inviting you in. And you walk in, you have something to eat, and you notice that everything seems to almost be like touch screens everywhere. And incredibly technological. And you ask where you are. And they explain that you're circling a planet. And they say what planet this is and what star system this is. And you ask about the year. And the year they name makes no sense to you. You notice that they look like ordinary humans. So you ask if they are, and they say that they are. You say when you're from, and ask when this is in relation to that. And they say that that was a long, long time ago. That by the year 10,000, people decided that it was getting stupid, having these years racking up into larger and larger numbers. And so they'd stopped using that old calendar. And that by then, people had spread out so far from the planet Earth The Earth had become more of a holiday destination where you visited to look at old stuff and to take photos. But they said that even the photos aren't really photos as you probably know them. It's more like taking mental images, and that you can encounter people and you can say, did you want to see the photos I took? And then almost like sharing memories with people, you share those still images and the moving images straight from one mind to another. That long ago they'd reached a point where technology and life merged together, where it was natural to have biological technology storing information within DNA, almost like using the DNA as hard drives, and being able to store different information throughout all the cells in a person's body. And that the ways of travelling and spreading out advanced so much, even achieving faster than light travel, but not by going faster than light. And with all of this, they've colonised such a large area, and population has continued to grow. It just now fills most of the galaxy, and any moon or planet that had the potential for habitability was colonised and continues to be colonised. But now that colonisation happens in harmony with the locations, rather than in a destructive manner. And so here you are, on a moon around a planet that has had some minimal terraforming, just to help work in harmony what was already here. And on some outposts like this, there's just a handful of people in any one location, often still focusing on the pursuit of knowledge and curiosity, which is what has driven humans to the stars and kept humans driving further and further ever since. And that there was a time when humans thought that life probably evolved elsewhere long ago, and that there's probably a lot of intelligent life out there. And they explained that there is intelligent life out there that's non-human life. But it turned out, once humans spread into space, that they were actually one of the first civilizations to reach that peak, rather than one of the last. They'd imagined they'd encounter civilizations millions, if not a couple of billion years older, with technology that's perhaps indistinguishable from magic. But instead they found that they were slightly ahead of the curve, and felt that it was their duty as a species to set an example of how to spread peace and harmony through the galaxy. And here you are, somehow stepped through a mirror onto this moon in the future. And they explained they didn't even know anything about this mirror, how it got there, where it came from. But it seems almost like portals that have been laid down, a bit like some of the technology they've had for a while now, to allow them to seemingly travel faster than light by bypassing space and time. And as you sat, looking around you, seeing what the inside of this location's like, seeing if there's anything more you can learn, that maybe you can remember when you wake from this dream. You notice what looks like a TV screen, and you ask what's going on that TV screen. And they say that you don't really want to know. It's a guilty pleasure of theirs to watch this program. And you're curious what the guilty pleasure of a human thousands of years in the future is. And they make that screen larger, and the screen almost floats in the air with a level of solidity, as if it's a solid screen, yet there's nothing really there. It's almost like a projection into space. And you notice the strangest thing. It's an unusual cartoon, and they describe it as a vintage cartoon, as something people used to watch many years ago. But to you, this is a cartoon that doesn't exist yet. It's a futuristic cartoon. And it has a strange element of almost seeming real, and yet you can tell that it's animated, but it's not like computer generated. It looks very much like the kinds of cartoons many people remember as children. And on this cartoon you see lots of different animals running around, interacting with each other, talking with human voices, as many cartoons of the past did, and of the present. But you get told that in the old days, so they've been led to believe, people used to compete to try to win rather than just trying to better themselves, rather than having a pursuit being the pursuit of knowledge and personal growth. People used to have pursuits of trying to be better than others and trying to prove that they're better than others. And this cartoon tries to poke fun at that unusual, archaic idea. And in this cartoon, there are some really good friends, and they spend all their time trying to prove they're better than each other. And in this episode, there's a guinea pig, there's a fox, there's a duck, there's a cat, and they're all competing in an Olympics. And they said they've heard that the Olympics was some kind of competition where people try to prove that they're the best, and that people would go to lengths of even cheating to try and prove they're the best. They're explaining that they don't understand why, because how can you prove you're the best if you've cheated to be the best? because all that proves is that you probably weren't. And they have no concept of the old times. And so they find this really amusing, watching these animals dashing around. With that guinea pig doing a 100-meter sprint, with the fox easily dashing past, with its brushy tail bounding along, all that fur flowing back, almost as if it's some kind of a super speedy fox. And then doing diving, where the duck seems to do better at duck diving than the fox almost belly flopping, and the guinea pig getting out the water looking like a puffball. And they're all friends, but they spend the whole episode competing in different events. And the cat isn't a fan of the water events. But the cat loves the events where it can be stealthy and slow. And so they all compete through the episode. And while you watch this person laughing, wondering what they're finding so amusing, hearing the different catchphrases of the characters, you realise that some aspects of the future just haven't changed. That people still find things funny, still have humour and comedies, and still watch programs and entertainment. Despite all the talk of scientific advancement and a desire for knowledge and following curiosity. And they explain that myths and legends really absorb you, take your mind elsewhere, and can teach you so much about life, about the world, and is so much more memorable than just bombarding people with scientific facts and with general knowledge, especially when there's so much to learn and to understand about the universe. And after a while, you say goodbye to this person. You head back towards that mirror. And as you pass through the mirror, you find yourself back in that dark room. And as you look around, you notice that the light is fading, that those mirrors are becoming harder and harder to see. And you begin to feel that gentle rocking of being on that boat, and of beginning to drift out of this dream and back to normal reality. And as you drift back to being on that boat, you cling on to some of that sense of drowsiness, almost like that moment between sleep and wake in the morning, where you're awakening in the morning naturally and feel that incredible pleasure of that moment before waking up, where you're no longer tired, and you know that when you do wake, you're going to wake feeling full of plenty of energy, but you feel so incredibly comfortable, wrapped up in satin and silk sheets, so soft and the smell of the salty air, and eventually knowing you've got to get out of bed. You wake up on this boat, noticing how the sun's risen in the sky. You have something to eat, raise the anchor, and continue your journey. And on your journey, you can now see those whales that you could only hear at night. And you can see the land in the distance that you're heading towards. And after a long time, as night begins to set in again, you arrive at your destination. You arrive at a small secret cove, a place you love to come on holiday that can only be reached by boat. And the whole journey you've been pondering and wondering about your dream, about the experience, about how real it felt, curious about what you were learning, and how it was rewiring, reprogramming your mind, how it seemed to rejuvenate you and help you feel so refreshed and alert when you awoke, and that you almost felt like a new person, like a weight had been lifted from your shoulders, like something was left behind, and you're able to move forward and engage in your experiences in a new way. And you moor up the boat and walk into the cove, walk to a cabin, open the door to the cabin. And you notice that it's a little dusty in places. So you clean up a little bit around the cabin before making yourself something to eat and drink, lighting a fire, settling down by that fire, phoning home, asking how last night went, really trying to fish to see if you'd actually visited, to check to see if it was just a dream. But the description they gave you was that you were never there. That they just had a hot chocolate. They were wrapped up in a comfy dressing gown. They sat for a little while, drinking their hot chocolate before heading to bed. But you were never there. They don't tell you that directly, but they don't describe you as part of their experience. And you know that if you had really been there, they'd be curious how you got to here from there so quickly. And so you wonder how you knew that they'd had a hot chocolate. They seem to have had pretty much the experience you'd imagined in your dream, just without you present. And this just makes your mind wonder more about that, and about the meaning of that, while you rest in front of that fire in that seat. And you just start rocking gently in that chair as your mind wanders and drifts and dreams. And while you just settle in to some time on holiday here, for a breakaway for a few days, You can hear outside the very distant, gentle rumble of thunder. You know there's going to be some rain coming soon. And you know that with that rain, when you wake up in the morning, the wet lavender outside the cabin is going to smell so fresh. The smell's going to be enhanced by that rain. You know the air is going to smell so fresh, as if the rain has cleared all of the particles out of the sky. And after a while of relaxing, you head to bed, looking forward to what you'll be doing for the next few days. And while thinking about the future, about what you've got to look forward to, about what you're pleased to have and grateful for, you drift so peacefully and comfortably and relaxed asleep.